This is NTV.
After 7 o'clock in Nairobi and across East Africa, and you're bang on time for your world this Wednesday, the 6th day of the month of October. And this morning, we'd like to talk about the youth and electoral processes ahead of the 2022 general elections, because the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has this week kickstarted a 30-day mass registration exercise targeting to net at least 6 million new voters ahead of the 2022 general elections, with the legal age of voting in Kenya at 18 and the last voter registration exercise in 2017. It means these 6 million voters are most likely between the ages of 18 and 22. They now join millions of other young people aged between 18 and 35 years in forming a critical mass that will most likely dictate the voting patterns in 2022. The power of the youth vote forms the basis of our discussion this morning on the role of the youth in electoral processes,
including for voter education, electoral security and voter registration.
Coming up, the 30-day mass voter registration exercise enters the second day, but the turnout is still low.
Sur ce, je laisse la parole au président du bureau d'âge.
Chad's interim parliament takes office after members were named by the military following the death of longtime ruler Idris Deby Itno.
It's an attempt by government, for whatever reasons, to weaken the commission.
IEBC and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs lock horns over the control of funding from foreign corps.
They don't value those elections. Most of them say those leaders were elected.
And what's the role of the youth in electoral processes in Kenya, and how do they influence voting patterns? The role of the youth in electoral processes, that's what we talk about this morning, and we want you to be part of that conversation by engaging us on social media, on Twitter at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _. Use the hashtag #NewNormal. This question for the day is, are Kenyan youth playing their rightful role when it comes to electoral processes? Are the Kenyan youth playing their rightful role in electoral processes? You can send that feedback, as I mentioned, at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _ on Twitter. Use the hashtag #NewNormal so that we can see the tweets that you're sending us. And you can send the same feedback, by the way, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram and elsewhere, where we are streaming this conversation. But before that, COVID-19 is still with us, and we want to give you the latest figures according to Corona Tracker in Kenya and across the world. These are the latest numbers. 236,593,653 people have so far been confirmed with COVID-19 so far across the world. 213,721,839 of them have recovered. But sadly, we've lost 4,831,604 people to COVID-19 so far. That's over the last 1.5 years or so. In Kenya, 250,380 people, can you believe it, have been confirmed with COVID-19 so far. 243,064 of them have recovered, both of course in hospital and at home. But sadly, we've lost 5,150 people to COVID-19 so far in Kenya. That's why we continue to remind you to follow the protocols set out by the Ministry of Health, which includes masking up at all times, washing your hands or sanitizing as regularly as you can, and maintaining the 1.5 meters social distance. Here's the biggest stories in Kenya and across the African continent. The countrywide voter registration exercise on Tuesday entered the second day, with the Independent and Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC saying that the exercise has not yet picked pace. The low turnout has been attributed to poor sensitization. However, IEBC is still hopeful that it will reach the target of registering 6 million new voters before the 30 days end. Different leaders have continued to call on their constituents to turn up and register.
Toa hodaka hiyo eti hatutaki mwenye anafanya kazi wa pikipiki kabla hajakata kura, na kuna maabiria ambayo tutabeba leo kulingana na hii shughuli ambayo inaendelea. Sasa leo tumeona hata wavuvi hawataenda kwa ziwani kufua samaki ili wakuje wakate kura.
IBC imepiga firimbi. Tafadhali. I want to request where you are staying kwa hizo compound. Ukipata mama ambaye hajashika kura, I want to ask you, pick that lady, pick that old man, peleka yeye ashike kura.
Let's turn to Central Africa. Chad's interim parliament took office on Tuesday, nearly 2 weeks after its members were named by the military junta that emerged following the death of longtime ruler Idriss Déby Itno. The 93-member assembly, called the National Transition Council, was named by the head of the country's military government, General Mahamat Idriss Déby, who declared himself the country's leader following the death of his father, President Idriss Déby, 5 months ago. After taking power, the military dismissed the government, dissolved parliament, and rescinded the constitution, but it promised to hold free and transparent elections within the time frame of 18 months. To North Africa now, Morocco has begun administering booster COVID-19 vaccine shots as part of the national COVID-19 vaccination campaign, a decision it says follows the recommendations of the Moroccan Scientific Committee, but also it takes into account the international scientific recommendations. Morocco has already inoculated 48% of its population and only ranks behind Seychelles and Mauritius, who lead Africa's vaccination statistics, having fully vaccinated over 60% of their population so far. The World Health Organization, WHO, has been asking rich countries with large supplies of coronavirus vaccines to refrain from offering booster shots through the end of the year and make doses available for poorer countries, insisting that introducing booster doses should only be family evidence-driven and targeted to the population in greatest needs. And to a story that will lead us into our conversation of the day, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, may be exuding confidence in being able to net millions of new voters in the recently launched registration exercise. But the chairman is worried that things could grind to a halt owing to insufficient funding. NTV has learned that IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati is opposed to the proposal by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have a liaison officer to oversee the funds from the diplomatic corps to IEBC at a time when the Commission has been complaining of Treasury is reluctant to fully fund its activities. Bridges Nkana has more.
Funding, we have some organizations that have already rolled out.
At such a time, the Center for Enhanced Democracy and Governance, a grassroots community-based organization, would be carrying out voter education alongside the IEBC's mass voter registration currently underway. But recent developments at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs banning the international community from funding some of IEBC's activities has had a ripple effect even at the local level.
We don't get funding without government knowing. That's the truth of the matter. The government saying that IPC is adequately resourced by internal means, which is a lie. We know it's not. What we begin to see at this point in time is an attempt by government, for whatever reasons, to weaken the commission.
Sentiments echoed during the launch of the enhanced voter registration, with envoys presenting veiled attempts at getting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to loosen the noose around funding prospects.
The United Nations recently launched the so-called Deepening Democracy program here in Kenya to support Kenya's democracy from now to the elections and actually even a lot further. And Germany, the European Union, and others are part of this effort to work together with Kenya in deepening its democracy.
But we do want to work with the IEBC to provide technical assistance and support, including for voter education, election security, and voter registration.
In July, the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo wrote to diplomats saying the state would bear the sole prerogative to coordinate election-related needs and resource gaps that may call for partnerships, and that Kenya is cognizant of recently orchestrated events and experiences meant to interfere and sometimes lead to skewed national election outcomes globally. A move that was met with harsh resistance from the IEBC chair Wafula Chebukati, who on September 17th, through a letter, defended the independence of the commission, saying, "Except as otherwise provided in the Constitution, the Commission shall not be subject to the direction of any person or authority, but shall observe the principle of public participation and the requirement for consultation with stakeholders."
Kenyans need to be told a weak electoral management body is a recipe for a bad election, and we all need to stand up in defense of the Commission.
IEBC maintains if government doesn't want the international community, then it should fully fund its 40 billion shilling budget. Bridget's Ghana, NTV, Nakuru.
The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, is targeting to register some 6 million new voters by the end of this month to vote in the 2022 general elections. In 2017, there were 9.9 million young voters aged between 18 and 35. Clearly, they are forming a critical mass in Kenya, and they could be able to dictate the voting patterns in the country. But are they aware? Are they aware of the weight that the voters' card that they hold actually carries, and the Kenyan youth deliver the so much needed change in leadership in Kenya? We'll be putting that into perspective in a short while. But before we do that, he has some numbers to help us understand why the youth vote actually matters. According to the Kenya 2019 census, Kenya's population stood at 47,564,296. And of course, of that figure, 23,548,056 of them were male. And of course, the females were more at 24,014,716. Let's get to see the proportion of young people from that end. For the proportion of young people, people under 35 years, from that 47 million figure was actually 35.7 million, which is 75.1%, again, informing the importance, really, of young people and forming a huge bulk of Kenya's population at this moment. And according to that very same census, people aged between 18 to 34, which are essentially people defined as youth under the Constitution, but also who can vote, that the figure was 13,777,600, which is about 29%. Let's get you more figures. In 2017, there were a total of 19.6 million registered voters. That is by the time the voting registration exercise was closed on the February of 2017. And of that, 9.9 million of them were actually young people aged 18 to 35 years old, which is just about above 50%, which again helps you understand why the youth form a very critical mass and have a very huge numerical strength and advantage heading to 2022. But the question is, will they use it? Allow us to put that into perspective for you this morning. My guests are joining me in studio this morning for this conversation. Mike Segana is the youth leader based in Kasarani. Good morning, Mike, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
All right, and also joining us in studio this morning, Joshua Changoji is the Executive Secretary of CRECO. And if you don't know about CRECO, CRECO is the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium. Joshua, it's good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you, Victor, and good morning.
All right, and also joining us virtually this morning is Laban Cheruiyot. Laban is the Deputy Director and Head of Public Education and Training at the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, that is KNCHR. Good morning, Laban, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Victor. I'm glad to be with you.
All right, we'll also be joined shortly by Ruth Ambogo. She's a political aspirant in Western Kenya. We will be helping us, other people helping us dissect this conversation for you this morning. But really, if we can jump into it, Joshua, it's just about, I believe, 10 months away. No, not actually, under 10 months before the next election. And everyone, if you look around, politicians are falling over each other, trying to look good and please the youth. But how critical is the youth vote in this election?
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. But let's begin by statistics. That 80% of the population of our country are 35-year-olds and below. So when you look at the youth sector, which is 18 years to 35 years, as defined by the Constitution, is also a critical mass. And even from the statistics of the voters registered in 2017, you can see that the youth formed the bulk of the voters in that particular election, and also in the other elections that we've had in our country. So even this projection by the IEBC of 6 million new voters, people who have attained the age of 18 years by just acquiring the national identity card, and that is why there is an enhanced voter registration. And I think that is the target population, because these are people who will be participating in the elections for the first time. They've never participated in our electoral process. So, and as you allude to the fact that there is need for voter education, because voter education is not only just, enhancing the skills and the knowledge to this particular group of people to participate in the electoral process, but also on how they are going to meaningfully engage in the electoral process for their livelihoods, because the decisions they are going to make is going to inform on how their lives is going to be in the next 5 years. And of course, as you see, the political campaigns are also informed by challenges that are faced by the youth of this country. So it is a consequent population that they matter in this country. And as we engage into this exercise, I think we appeal to our youth that this is their moment of getting involved.
Okay. Laban, 51% of the total voters in 2017, it could be higher this year as we try and see some 6 million voters. Of course, a number of them who are then in the age bracket of a youth could have gone beyond that, but really it could be higher this year. Let me just get your introductory remarks for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Victor. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, very well.
Yes. Indeed, the youth play a very critical role, just like you have demonstrated in the statistics we just shared. The youth really did have about 50%. And therefore, their participation and their active participation is very key as we go towards the next election. And if you add that to the about 6 million that we are now anticipating will be registered during this window of 1 month that the IEBC has given to the Kenyans to register, indeed, that means then that percentage will go up maybe about 70%. And that's why probably, as you can see, most of the political parties now, or those who are running for elections, most of their programs you can see are geared towards, that very, very important and wide base of the youth. And therefore, it is very important that all the youth really come out and register, so that then they can form that critical mass and decide the destiny of their country by the power of the vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laban. Mike, if I come back to you then, as we wait for Ruth to join us, really, can any leader then out there afford to ignore the youth at this point?
My contribution, according to the Constitution, Article 260, it is defined that youths start from at the age of 18 to 35. Now, we've seen, of late, we've seen the rush for the youth by political bigwigs. And it is my message out there that they should know. The youths right now, they are informed. In this age bracket, that at this time of age and time, the youths normally use, most of them, they use technology. And therefore, they will make informed decisions come 2022. And it will be critical, and they will form the better part of the government.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, Joshua, are you on TikTok?
Yes, I am, and I'm not.
The reason I'm asking if you're on TikTok is because I am not on TikTok myself. I'm just 28 years old, but I've seen politicians 60 years old and above really going into these platforms, falling over each other, trying to create content, trying to, I mean, go into literally every other trending topic of the day to just try and appeal to this youthful population.
Yeah, Victor, the space for the next political campaign will be the virtual space. Technically, it can be informed by several factors, and this could be as a result of the pandemic. You can see there is a tendency in this country where now the measures and the protocols to combat COVID-19 being extended. I think it was the other day that there is a 30-day extension, and we don't know how this is going to look like. It can also go up to the elections. And what does that mean? It means the spaces where people are going to interact is the virtual space, and social media is going to play a very critical role, because now it is popular where politicians, those who are aspiring for political seats, and those ones who are also in need of knowledge are now getting from the popular social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok that you've just mentioned. And of course, the other day when WhatsApp and these other ones crashed, TikTok and these Signal, and people were getting alternatives, how they would do that. But the other thing is that the critical mass of population of this country, they are in the virtual, and these are the youth. That is where you can find them, because that is where they can interact. For them, they cannot find value like going into a political rally to just go and listen to a politician. You will find them that they are doing quite a number of their other work, but in the process, they also interact with infomercials that are found in social media. But again, as you ask that, will the social media play a very critical role in this electoral process? Even when you look at the IBC, their mass campaign, they are now doing in social media. The politicians, when they are seeking, they are popularizing their agenda, is in social media. The youth, when they are passing messages, even as we are in this discussion, in this debate, in this national television, I'm quite sure the youth are following using social media, not in their television sets in the house, in the home states. So it's very critical, Victor, that even the shift has to be there. And allow me to illustrate one thing. I mean, in terms of attention seeking to the youth population in this country, in 2013, if you remember the campaigns very well, that it was highly contested because it was a transitional election. And you remember the promises that were made to the youth, that the 6 billion Kenya shillings that were going to be used for the rerun, the youth were promised that if you make us pass in the first exercise of the election, the money that was going to be for a rerun will go into youth programs. But we ask ourselves, is that money really still felt by the youth, even as we speak now? Where did that money go? If we talk about the promises that the youth are being given, we've seen there are empty promises quite a lot of times that we see that.
All right, but now this brings me to the next point then. So we are talking about 9.9 million, over 51%. Clearly the critical mass. Everyone is trying to please them. But Laban, are the youth then aware of the power that they hold?
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. Indeed, the youth are very much aware of the power that they hold. And as you can see from the, what they normally exchange through the social media, as pointed out by my colleague, the youth have that potential, and through the social media, you can see them, using the social media to profile and be able to, espouse some of their needs, and therefore the youth really are aware of what is for them in this election. At the same time, if you look at what they're able to share in social media, we should look at it from a two-edged sword. In the sense that much as the technology now enables them to be able to, share, to be able to bring about the qualities of good leadership that they would aspire or espouse, And also, for instance, you can even see them making a lot of criticism and praises in equal measure for the respective candidates that they have. But then we should also look at this, like I said, as a two-edged sword. In the first instance, the space that the youth have can be very positive and constructive by them trying to rally behind their fellow youth and the citizens at large to be able to follow and be able to bring out, the good qualities of leadership that they should be able to seek out, and also to be able to have one of their own. I think one of the most critical aspects also of the youth is that they should not only wait, and then they be led. I remember when I was a young man, we used to be told that you are the leaders of tomorrow. But I think with the aspect and coming up of many aspirants, young men and young women, to be able to contest and be part of the change that they want, I think it is a very critical opportunity for them, therefore, to use this opportunity in a very positive way to be able to profile the leadership that they would prefer and that they would vote for.
Okay.
But the other side of the sword, like I said, Victor, is that the youth can also, use the space, especially the social media space, to bring about distraction, to be able to, be a part of the ethnic profiling of the country, to be used to mobilize along ethnic lines. They can also be used, as we know, they can also be misused, not actually used, to be part of the violence, and hate speech and that kind of thing. So I think the youth really know that they should have this and know that they have that potential in their hands to be able to contribute positively and use the avenues that they have, including social media, and also the fact that they have a critical mass, as you mentioned, over 50%, to be able then to make the positive contribution that we need so that they can be able to make a positive impact and bring about the required change that we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Laban. And clearly the difference for me here, there is what civic education would be able to do. But before we get to that, Ruth Mboga has already joined us now. She's a political aspirant, I believe, in Western Kenya. Good morning, Ruth, and welcome.
Good morning.
All right. Let me start here. Why are you politicians and aspirants falling over each other, going on TikTok, everything, just trying to please the youth?
First of all, I'd like to apologize for arriving late. Mombasa Road is a mess. And then second, I don't know whether this question, I don't know whether I'm the right person to answer this question because personally I am a young person. So when I am on TikTok, I mean, it shouldn't raise any, it should not raise any eyebrows that I am on TikTok or any other social media platform that young people frequent. But of course, I do get the validity of your point, which is that, why is it that suddenly the older generation of...
Actually, let me just come back to you on that as we try to fix something. But really, Joshua, we have all agreed on the critical mass that the youth hold, the vote that they hold, the numerical advantage and strength that they have. But are they ready to exercise this, is the question.
Victor, the way I look at it, they are not ready. And allow me to be controversial in the sense that this is from the observation point of view. This is day 3 of the enhanced mass voter registration. And day 1, you saw what has happened. I mean, low turnout by this critical mass to submit themselves to register as voters. And, there are comfort zones, as even we mentioned that is in social media. But our electoral process in terms of execution of the exercise of voting or even registration is not digital. What we have very close to it in that registration center is that electronic voter identification device. But you cannot say that you can vote electronically. You must also submit yourself to interact with the knowledge of the manual aspect of the electoral process, such as marking the ballot paper, the symbols that are going to be used, how a ballot box looks like. How do you engage yourself in terms of even the structure of the polling station? Those are not electronic mechanisms that are put in place, and of course our law has not provided the same. So we are not advanced as yet like other countries. So sometimes we can also be very challenged and also be too ambitious to say we can use our electronic devices, but we are not yet there. I mean, where the real game is interacting with the infrastructure that has been put there manually by the electoral body that we have in our country. So the preparation aspect, I doubt that from an observation point of view, because we see the youth, they are still in their comfort zones. They've not come out. And Here, there are 4 opportunities that prevails themselves for the youth in this country. Number 1, to come out and register as voters. This exercise, the target actually is the youth and those who would want probably to change polling stations in the coming elections. And of course, the IBC will be cleaning the voters register. So we've had the government lamenting to say that there's a lot of ID cards which have never been collected by the new registered persons of this country. Who are these? These are the youth. And that is a sign that they are not ready. Because if they have not picked an ID card, which is mandatory to register as a voter, then that is a signal that there is a problem somewhere. Then 2, they submit themselves to be candidates of seeking political office, and I'm happy. My sister is here. And these are role models that we need, because the youth don't need to see others ascending to positions of political power, and then they sit back just to be voting. And the Constitution allows them to also participate as political leaders. And I think that is a subject of discussion that we must deeply engage in, so that we see what kind of quality of youth present themselves in positions of leadership.
Mike, I'm sure you're itching to respond on whether you as young people, as Joshua is accusing you of, are not ready to bring the change that is much needed. But before we do that, we actually asked people on the streets whether they think the Kenyan youth are actually playing their rightful role in electoral processes. Let's get to hear from them first.
Instead of going to vote, they are being used wrongly by politicians to cause chaos. And they have not actually known the importance of having a very good leader. And you know, sometimes they are so busy with activities that does not elevate their life. And they end up even choosing the wrong leadership because they don't want to participate in leadership. That is actually the major problems that is facing the youth now. And they really need civic education about the issue so that they can actually know the importance of electoral system. So if they can actually utilize their numbers, they can use it to vote good leadership in Kenya.
Hao ndio wanatumika kuleta fujo katika mambo ya siasa, kuleta fujo katika uchaguzi, na pia vijana wenyewe ndio wanatumika kukemea wanasiasa badala ya kusikia maswala. Hata ikifika wakati wa kukata kura, vijana hawataki kukata kura kwa sababu wanataka kitu kubwa na kitu ndogo. Katika population vijana ni wengi, lakini hawajui kutumia huo wingi.
They don't value those elections. Most of them say those leaders we elect and hawakuji kutusaidia. Those are the things, that's why youths participate for those elections.
Hawajui umuhimu ya kuvote. Nataka kuwahimiza vijana wote watokelezee hii muda ambao umetolewa na IPC, wachukue kura sababu kura ndio ngao yao. They cannot bring about changes without a vote. And they should know their rights, they have got a right to vote. The only way we can realize changes of any other leadership that we want to have in our country, in our world, in any other level of leadership, it is through taking a voter's card and voting during the voting day.
Mike, you've just seen those sound bites, really. But before we even get to the sound bites, Joshua has given a huge accusation that you as young people are not ready.
Allow me to respond to what Joshua has said. Yeah? And allow me also to concur with what Joshua said.
Okay.
As a youth, I can tell you for free, I've been on the ground, and specifically, let me speak for where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I come from Kasarani constituency. And in Kasarani constituency, we came up with a youth group, a movement, a big movement that is called Youth in Politics in Kasarani. And our major vision is governance. You see, when we talk about governance, that means that when the youths, they need to be educated. My other learned friend said that the youth, there's another percentage that are ready, and there's another percentage that needs to be convinced that you guys need to vote. Because when you go back to the youths, they normally ask you, why should I vote?
Oh, really?
Yeah, very true. Why should I vote? And the leaders up there are corrupt. We don't have jobs. People are languishing in poverty and drugs. So now, and what we can see is right now, if I look back in 2017, there is an initiative that was a digital moved initiative.
Yeah.
It was like a campaign to enhance the youth. It was by IEBC to enhance the youth to vote for their leaders.
So if I can interrupt you, Mike, when they're asking you why they need to vote, is it because they distrust the electoral bodies, or they see the leaders as not representative of their interests, or both?
Number one, which is a major problem in Kenya, and we cannot hide from it.
Yeah.
There is a big gap, and there's a problem with the leadership structure that is there. We have so many cases of corruption, and the rich in Kenya, they get away with the corruption cases. That is very true. So now the youth, they ask themselves, why should I vote? They'll still steal and they'll get away with it. So now that's why we need voter education and awareness that you should vote, so that we can make decisions and to be on the decision table in the next government.
Okay. But I'm itching to ask you, whose responsibility is it to educate the youth? But even before I do that, I mean, Mike has talked about every time he's on the streets, he's asked, why do I need to register? Why do I need to vote? Are these some of the questions you run into?
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor and colleagues, panelists, fellow panelists. Yes, it is very important for the youth to really ask that very critical question about why it is important for them to register. And indeed, you can see even from the soundbite we just played, there's a lot of expectation on the youth. However, I think we need to all put our efforts together to ensure that we carry out sufficient civic and voter education, so that the youth can really discover, so to speak, the potential that they have in their own hands in terms of making a decision and also participating in this process. You can also get this, that there is a lot of a sense of disillusionment and on the expectation of the youth, because most of them apparently, like someone mentioned, they could be very active during the electioneering process.
Yeah.
But when the D-Day counts, the day of polling, you realize that even those that probably have been turning out in public meetings and running around, actually do not have the critical documents, and that is the voter's card. And therefore, this really leaves a very huge gap in terms of the need to carry out voter and civic education. Of course, this is a joint venture. We expect that the Electoral and Independent Electoral and Bodies Commission will take lead in voter education. But then they cannot do it alone, because first of all, the issue of resources is constrained. The issue of, for instance, being able to cover the whole country at the same time. So matters is the role of the IEBC, and I would like to mention in this show that the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has been accredited by the IEBC to be able to be one of those that carry out voter education. But I know for sure the civil society organizations play a very critical role in providing civic education. Our colleagues in the churches, they should be able to carry out civic education. I know sometimes we expect a lot on the politicians to carry out civic education. They also have that role. However, of course, we know what normally happens on the ground.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to just urge that we should be able, again, to carry out civic and voter education to be able to reach all sectors. We know that for the youth, we need to design programs that will really reach out to them in the spaces that they have. And I think the TikTok and the social media handles will be a role.
Okay.
Another critical role player is the media. The media is like what you're doing now, Victor. Is very important to be able to reach out to all Kenyans. And therefore, the media will play a very critical role, the civil society, the state actors, the constitutional commissions, to be able to reach out to the public, so that the youth in particular are able to participate. And I think the most important question here is, how are we designing programs, voter education programs that will be able to reach the youth, but also not leave out the other critical aspects of our population, the women, the vulnerable members of society, so that everybody participates and makes this a very critical role, so that we can all have participation. Remember, participation is not only participation, but it has to be quality participation. They need to really reach out there and be able to carry out, the decision in terms of, which leaders to vote in based on informed positions, and which is non-partisan, and we should be able to bring about that enhancement so that they can be able to make the critical choices when the right time comes.
Thank you, Laban. Ruth, clearly, even I know you were not done speaking earlier on, but do you think you, as a leader, as an aspiring leader, have a role to play in terms of voter sensitization and civic education?
We definitely do. As aspiring politicians, we do have a role to play in sensitizing the young people to get registered as voters. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we are the ones who actually have the highest stake in this process. At the end of the day, the more the numbers of young people, or not necessarily young people, but the more the numbers of people registered as voters, for us, that's a good sign for us. And especially for those who are, aspiring to vie for the very first time. What normally happens in politics is that the political landscape is set up in such a way that if an election has already taken place, say for instance, if I vied in 2017 and I probably won in 2017, there's a certain number of voters that I control in the particular constituency or area of legislation that I will have vied in. Let's say if I was vying for Member of Parliament for one of the constituencies in Nairobi, Starehe for instance, if I won, then there's already a certain percentage of voters who are already in my basket. So if there's a new, if we're having a new election cycle in 2022 and there are new aspirants coming on board, they definitely have to be invested in the process of trying to get as many people registered because they are aware that the incumbent already has, a particular number of voters that they do control. So it's in their interest, it's in their best interest to try and get as many, new voters registered as possible with the hope that they will try to control those, those numbers of votes. But the danger with that is that what I see is we see politicians getting out of their way to do whatever it is, whatever necessary it is, to get people registered, even if those people do not necessarily come from the places that they are going to, that they are going to vie in. Like for instance, let's say if again, with the same example of Starehe constituency, if I'm vying in Starehe constituency, you will find that some politicians are going all out, transporting voters from as far as rural areas to come to Starehe constituency, to come and register as voters. And the danger with that is that the process might actually end up being an exercise in futility. Because if I go and bring a bus, if I ferry a bus, 5 buses of young people from Western, where I come from, to come and register as voters in Starehe, and then the election period comes and something happens and I'm unable to ferry the same young people back to Nairobi to come and vote for me, then the whole essence of voter registration, it beats the purpose of voter registration.
Okay. So that we can't trust politicians.
We cannot trust politicians with the, we cannot trust, and I'm speaking as a politician, we cannot entirely place the burden of voter voter sensitization to the politicians, because the politicians will do what is in the best interest for them. As a politician, for instance, I usually see this happening a lot, especially when we are nearing elections. As a politician, if let's say I'm at a public rally and I'm addressing the people, one of the things that you might probably hear me saying is, especially when we are nearing elections, you will probably hear me say a statement such as, "Ata kama unipendi, even if you do not agree with my policies, if you don't like me, go to the ballot."
Just vote for me.
No, if you don't like me, go to the ballot. When you arrive at the voting station, go and put an X, on my name. Which is basically telling the voter,
vote for me.
Vote for me, in another way, vote for me. So basically, the exercise and I think the role of voter sensitization needs to be taken seriously by IEBC. I think IEBC should lead the process. And my challenge with what IEBC normally does is that they wait for, a few months to the elections, and that is when you see what they call voter sensitization, which for me is not necessarily voter sensitization, but training young people on basically how to register as a voter, which is not necessarily the full component of what voter sensitization is. And I also think that the process of voter, sensitization and just voter education should also extend to the family unit. Parents should be able to sit down with their kids and educate them on why voting is important. They should be able to remind them that, look, some of the major critical decisions that take place within this country that affect you as an individual, that affect us as a family to the lowest unit of the family level, are actually problems and situations that actually get resolved at the ballot, at the voting process.
Okay.
As parents, most parents have probably voted, you know, twice or 3 times, 4 times within their lifetime, and they can be able to see what, you know, the power of the vote. They can be able to see how failing to vote for the right leaders affects, for instance, whether the cost of living shall be high or not, whether they can be able to afford, you know, even school fees for their kids or not, whether they can be able to sustain their families or not. So with that knowledge, having all those 4 decades, or I mean all those 4 or 5 cycles of having gone through elections, then parents, the same way we sit down and teach our kids what they should or should not do when they're in campus, how they should be able to lead their lives, how they should save money, how they should, you know, basically, if we can train them on other aspects of life, then we should be able to sit with them and also train them and teach them on the value of voting and you know, the importance of making the right decision when it comes to the election period.
Joshua, one of those 6 million new voters that the IEBC is targeting is an 18-year-old somewhere in Bungoma, Baringo, or anywhere in this country. They're just 18. How should they know, determine who to vote for between Mike and Ruth?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Let me pick from where Ruth has just left that the mandate of conducting voter education in this country is constitutionally mandated to the IEBC, not any other body. Other bodies such as the media, civil society, religious groups, and the independent commissions from government only just come to complement the efforts of the IEBC, but using the manuals and the curriculum developed by the IEBC. Anything outside there, and that is why IEBC is supposed to accredit and ensure that the people who have been given the mandate to complement their efforts of voter education are people who are approved by them, because they would have gone through a due diligence process or even a vetting process, so that at least we prevent this problem that we've suffered in this country for a very long time. Disinformation and misinformation. Because you see, even our youth, in as much as we claim that they are enlightened because they have gone to school, they get disinformed. The example that Ruth just gave of the symbol of marking a ballot paper, it has really suffered, you know, in terms of how people are getting informed on how to exercise their democratic right in the voting process. But allow me again to say that the IEBC, in as much as they are given the mandate constitutionally, have suffered budgetary deficits. And the casualty in terms of their programming is voter education, because it will come the last in terms of the scale of preference of allocation of resources. And as we speak, the chairman of the IEBC has come on public record to say that their budget for conducting 2022 general election is 40 billion. But they have received from the exchequer is 26 billion. They have a deficit of 14 billion. So you would want to tell me that even as they project the increase in terms of the voters by 6 to 7 million, it means even there will be increase of polling stations or the polling centers, because the law provides for a ceiling of 700 voters per polling station. So if we're adding 6 million, and even if we clean the voters register, we say our brothers and sisters who have departed, you know, from this world, and they are no longer supposed to be in the voters register, they may not be equivalent to the 6 million that we are adding. So it means the number of the polling stations are going to increase, and it means also in terms of resource allocation, it's going to be increased, because it involves human resource, it involves, and of course that is where also another area where the youth have also an opportunity. And allow me mention this, that the temporary IEBC officials, in terms of the presiding officers and the clerks, majority are the youth. They are the ones who apply for these jobs. Even as we speak now, this mass voter registration exercise, the 30-day exercise that has now been commissioned by the IEBC, who are the majority of the people who are conducting this exercise? There is the youth. So the youth play not only a role of submitting themselves to be voters, participate as political candidates, such as our sister Ruth here, but they are also discharged in terms of guarding the vote, because they are involved in the process.
One word answer. Would you say we are adequately doing civic education in Kenya?
We are not.
We are not. All right. So what happens if we are not doing adequate civic education ahead of elections in Kenya? That's a question we'll answer after this break. But don't go too far because all my guests, Ruth, Laban, Joshua, and Mike, are staying with me.
Shushu, wamesema hakuna harusi.
Kwa nini? Hapana. Shushu, mamia harusi lazima itaendelea. Nani anasababisha harusi? Kofi.
Sababu ya kofi.
Kofi.
Brea record to streamiwe do.
Nasema Safaricom iko na free data kila siku. Sasa tunaweza kustream hiwe do.
Hi Shosho.
You may kiss the bride.
Pata hadi 500 MB free kila siku. Piga star 544 hash na uchague unlock free data. Mwelekeo ni internet.
Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, we offer free delivery within the same day? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can open an account and lipa pole pole at your convenience? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can get customized sizes according to your roof plan to avoid wastage? Call us now on 0111 050 700. Ruiru Mabati Factory, mali safi kwa bei poa.
Je, wajua? Dawa ya Bedlam ina uwezo wa kuua viwango vyote kutoka mayai hadi kunguni aliyekomaa. Je, wajua? Hakuna madhara ya kukaa chumbani baada ya kupuliza.
Bedlam imethibitishwa na shirika la afya duniani WHO kwa matumizi ya nyumbani. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana nasi kupitia nambari au tovuti yetu iliyo kwenye runinga yako. Tumia Bedlam 200 SL, uangamize kunguni kabisa.
NTV jioni, habari za kina, fasaha, tendeti na za kuaminika.
AMRC's objectives are aligned with the government's affordable housing pillar of the Big Four agenda. Visit any of the participating financial institutions today and start your home ownership journey. Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, unlocking liquidity for affordable housing.
Beautiful pictures of the city of Kampala in Uganda ushering us back to our conversation about the role of the youth in electoral processes. I'm still with Ruth Mbogo. She's the political aspirant joining me in studio this morning, as well as Mike Sagana, who is a youth leader in Kasarani area. I'm also in studio with me, Joshua Changoni, the Executive Secretary of CRECO, that is the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium. And joining us virtually this morning is Laban Cheriot, the Deputy Director and Head of Public Education and Training at the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, that is KNCHR. But this conversation is not just about us, but also about you. Earlier on, we asked you to send us your feedback. Let's get to see what some of you have been saying on social media, if we can get those right now. Yes, we have Alan Mwale who says no. So many times. Of course, the question was, do you think Kenyan youth are playing their rightful role when it comes to electoral processes? And Alan Mwale says no. So many times, these same politicians have been joking with our minds, false promises, and yet still vote for liars, for the liars. Thank you, Alan. Aldrin Oumaudwar, the youth narrative is a fallacy. Youth have existed before, they exist now. Politicians just use the youth as leverage. They are gullible. Thank you, Aldrin, for your feedback. Kareithi Mundia, Kenyan youth, like most of the middle classes, are frustrated by the government and have lost hope in any redemption. They believe we are on our own. It's however high time that the youth got very involved because the fate of this country is at stake now more than ever. It's time to seek alternative leadership. Thank you, Kareithi Mundia, and that's part of what we could sample for now. Allow me to quickly get your reactions to what Kenyans are saying, Ruth.
I like the comment of the person who said that, false promises, the false promises that come, unfulfilled promises that come after having voted. Mm-hmm. And I think that in a way contributes contributes largely towards the voter apathy that we see every other election and every other by-election that comes up. Yeah. That, our vote has been equated to something that we trade in for something in return. Mm-hmm. That, it's almost as if it's a bill of exchange, yeah? Where, let's say, for instance, earlier on when we took a break, we were having the conversation where I was saying that our vote is almost equated to 1,000 bob shillings, for instance, where I go to a shop, I give you 1,000 bob shillings as a shopkeeper, and I have a list of expectations. I'm telling you I need 5 packets of milk, I need bread, I need unga, I need cooking oil, and anything else that would be worth that 1,000 bob shillings. So if I give you 1,000 bob and in return you decide to not give me the items that I requested for or that you promised my 1,000 bob would be worth, the next time you're asking for that 1,000 bob, I'd ask myself, why should I give it to you? Mm-hmm. And the scenario in this, in the Kenyan political context is that when the aspirants come to us, for instance, right now, let's look at the various presidential aspirants and what they are promising. You hear of some saying, we are pursuing Azimio la Umoja. Some of them are pursuing Uchumi Bora, and they are promising that they will be able to revive the economy. Others are promising a double-digit economy. That is the Uchumi Maradufu, Kalonzo's slogan. Others are promising a bottom-up economic model that is supposed to apparently reach out to the most ordinary common mwananchi. Mamamboga's life is supposed to be directly affected and influenced. And, at the end of the day, these people will vote expecting that all these things that you're promising them, the roads that you're promising them, there are 1 million jobs in a year that you're promising them, all the goodies that you're promising to deliver, the proper healthcare systems and service delivery that you're promising them, their expectations is that once they have voted, that immediately after, they need to see those roads being constructed, they need to see the medical care system being revamped, they need to see the jobs, and not just, they don't want to hear that jobs have been created. They want to have examples of people that they can point out and say, anyway, gava ilisema for young people, you'd hear them say, if gava ilisema they have created 1 million jobs in a year, I know of 6 of my friends or 5 of my friends who have benefited from the same, or I, as an individual, I have. That border person should be able to wake up to, 3 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later, and say, I know of this program that is benefiting our boda circle, and Mama Mbogas should be able to come up and say that our business has been able to grow as a market. We are growing and we are expanding because of these government programs that were initiated. But what usually happens is that after elections, you don't see most of these things happening. So at the end of the day, voter apathy is associated to that, And I think politicians really just need to do a good job. Politicians just need to deliver, because if we really want the vote to mean something,
the vote has to mean something when there's delivery that is, you know, equated to it. But what I like also is that some of the young people, and I heard what he, earlier on I heard what he had said, that most of the young people are saying they will not vote because they don't see the power of the vote. They do not see the vote changing anything. They don't see, they're asking themselves, if I will vote, and then what, you know, what is the value of my vote? Unlike, I mean, I know of situations where, places where young people are saying that as a result of the bad leadership they have witnessed, as a result of the poor leaders they voted in, and some of the bad leaders they voted in 2017, or that they have witnessed, or, you know, basically as a result of the bad governance they have experienced, and some of the challenges they have faced, they are now vowing that they are actually now going to vote, and this time around they're going to vote for serious leaders. So in as much as we talk about they are going to, in as much as we say we anticipate voter apathy, there are actually some places, and I do hope that it shall be the entire country, where young people are saying, we see the cost of bad governance, we see the cost of not voting, we see the cost of voting in bad people, and so as a result of that, we are going to actually put our vote to better use this time round.
Okay. Mike, the common narrative on the streets is, you know, the youth are too young to make proper decisions, or the youth are not interested in politics, they're not interested in how their country is governed. Would you say this is a myth or the truth, or partly true?
What I can say is that is a myth. Because when you look at the youth, right now, coming from where I sit here, I've seen, I'm a former student leader at JKUAT University. And when I look at, let's say specifically from our university, there are so many young leaders who want to go for political seats. You see, now that brings us to the conclusion that the youth, I can concur with what Ruth has said, because now they're looking at what the bad governance has brought to Kenya. Now they're saying, let us now come and take these positions. Let us now vote in our people so that they can advocate for our rights and what we need as the youth.
Okay. So clearly then they are trying to change the situation as it is.
Exactly.
But really, I mean, if I can bring you, Joshua, if you saw what happened in Zambia, the youth are actually the people who sent President Lungu home very early.
And Trump.
Yeah, that is very true. If the youth are meaningfully mobilized. But if they are mobilized to be used, the way we've seen in the past in this country's elections, like in 2007, the youth were mobilized for a wrong reason, to do the mass demonstrations and you know, the violence then we had in this country. But allow me to say this, that the behavior of our politicians in different levels of our country is just a mirror of who we are in our society. These politicians have not come from another planet. They have come from our households. They have come from our societies. They have come from our markets. They have come from our, you know, the field of our different professions, whether engineers, lawyers, teachers, and all this. If they find themselves in positions of political positions of responsibility at the county level and at the national level, they do what probably is appealing to us. Because I think as Kenyans, number one, we've commercialized our politics, where we've attached, you know, the political campaigns to the monetary value. Who has more money than the other? And I think that is a song all over. From one corner of the country to the other, and even to the center here, even in Nairobi, and even to the remotest part. There are areas in this country that if you are aspiring for a political office and you give people 50 shillings, just like, you know, to entice them, they will chase you away. They would want 1,000 shillings, and it's on record. And there are places in this country, because of poverty levels, you give them 20 shillings or 50 shillings, they will accept that. And it's very appalling to an extent where they say, I think this is my share for the next 5 years. I know there's nothing that is even going to come to me when this person wins an election, because there's nothing to expect. Because of when these people assume the positions of responsibility, their main agenda, their priority agenda is to recover the money they used in the elections. And that is why there was a law that we are trying to push, which has never been implemented, and of course it was put, ascended to in 2012, and this is the Campaign Finance Act. It was suspended, it was never applied in 2013 general elections. In 2017, it was also pushed to 2022. The other day, the IBC gazetted, and of course the politicians were not happy with that. They came in revolt to say that, how can you come and control the money that I am going to use in my campaign? But I ask myself,
I can see Ruth is looking
yes,
at
that,
you very clearly.
That you are using private money to seek for a public office. Whose office is this? And of course, when you look and interrogate very critically, even from the constitutional, bedrock, Article 1, which is sovereignty belongs to the people. It doesn't say sovereignty belongs to the politicians. That is where we need to begin as Kenyans. Who has more power? Is it the citizen, the voter, or the politician? And how are you enabled as a Kenyan to exercise this sovereignty and power in terms of exercising the mandate to say, in this democratic process, this is how I'm going to participate to make informed choices and have people who can serve me and not people whom I will be serving.
Okay.
Yeah, and because we are the employers, we are the ones who put these people in office. We are the ones who pay tax. We've never had a tax holiday in this country where we can say we've stopped this man from paying taxes. We continually pay in all forms of sorts, and collectively, the decision making on how these resources are going to be used are made on our behalf by these people we put in these political offices. And of course, to conclude, Victor, is that I don't want us to look at the youth in isolation. Who are the role models of these youth? Let's ask ourselves those critical questions. I think we've reached a level in this country where the youth have prioritized money over values. Article 10 of the Constitution, provides for the national values and principles of governance. There are about 26 of them, pieces of national values, and patriotism is one of them. Patriotism in the sense that you love your country, you own your country, you own the affairs of your country. You are not doing that on behalf of any other person. And why do I say this? And I say it emphatically because I think we've lost it. Where you find a youth now, out of desperation, because even unemployment in terms of rates has been politicized and is being used as a campaign machine, where they are being enticed that when we get into power, we are going to provide avenues on how you youth are going to get employment. And of course, it's very juicy. But where are these employment? Over the other election periods, we've never seen this, youth getting these chances.
Laban, now that, Joshua's raised issues of voter bribery, violence in elections, and literally every other issues of disinformation. Are these the risks that we run when we do not do proper civic education?
Yes, indeed, those are the risks that we run. But also more critical and more importantly, is that the youth from the foregoing actually have abdicated their rights, just like has been mentioned by the fellow panelists. When the youth get into the bandwagon and also try to evaluate the political leadership and the choices they make based on the amounts of money that is being given to them, or based on certain promises of employment and what have you, it is actually an indication that they have indeed abdicated and they are not conscious of their rights. When we put a government into office, it is not by choice for them to tell us they are going to entice us with employment, they are going to entice us with this and that. Actually, it is our right as citizens to receive employment. It is our right as citizens to receive opportunities to be able to do business. It is our right as citizens to be able to participate. And therefore, if we reduce ourselves to the levels in which we are going to be like bribed to be able to carry out our constitutional mandate of exercising our right to choice, of exercising our right and receiving what is expected of the leadership to deliver to us. And if that is reduced to a level that goes to the level of, being used to reduce the youth to the level of gullibility, to reduce our voters to the level of begging, I think that's where we have got it wrong. And we need to reawaken the conscience of all our voters, be they the youth or other groups, to know that it is not a favor from any politician to extend some of the services that they promise.
Okay.
The other dimension I would like to also weigh in is that the voters should remember that they are not out there to wait to be told this is what we'll give you. They should know that this is a conversation in which they should also have a voice into what the government is going to do. Like we normally equate between the herder and the owner of the herd. The politician is actually the one who takes care of the animals, the herder. But the owner of the animals are the people themselves. And therefore, it is the owner of the animals who decides where you're going to graze today, who decides when you're going to take the cows or the goats to the watering place. And therefore, we should not allow the herder, who has just been given a temporary job, to be able to be the one to set the agenda. And therefore, I feel so concerned by one of the viewers who said that we are disillusioned, we have been gullible, and they come and just do this to us every year, every election cycle. The people, I think, through civic and voter education, should be able to be brought to a level in which they should realize and reaffirm their rights, that they are not being done any favor by any of these leadership, and that it is their right, it is their duty, and as right holders, the citizens should know and take up their space. It is actually not the other way around. We have abdicated our responsibility as citizens, as voters, as youth of this country, to the level that we no longer are able to take up our rightful place. And instead, we have allowed ourselves to be relegated. And therefore, voter education should be able to reawaken this in us and get us into the right perspective. And remember that even the youth and all the other voters in this country have a right to set the agenda. Don't wait to be told we'll give you 6,000 or whatever laptops. It is us to decide what we want, because it is what is for us. We cannot, there's nothing for us if we are not part of that process. And therefore, voter education will help us realize and take charge of our rights, our right to make free choice, our right of voting the person we wish. And I think I should also like to disabuse the fact that it is not only the elderly politicians who will come and entice voters with the money that we are talking about, the amounts. We even have, unfortunately, even young people who are aspiring for leadership, and instead of standing out on their own and charting a new path, they are again falling into the same old trap of going to, entice voters with the resources, well, depending on where they voted them from, and also, taking the same balkanization along ethnic lines and what have you. And I think the voter education that is given properly, and I think, as pointed out earlier on, by the IEBC, should be able to help that. And I think also we should also consider that voter education does not only happen, or civic education does not only happen around the election or a few months to election. This should be a continuous process, so that we are able to empower your people to be able, because remember, we have the general election once after 5 years. But remember, we have by-elections in between, and therefore the aspect of voter education, in my view, should be a continuous process that goes on throughout the election cycle, so that our people become empowered and remember and reclaim what is actually their rights in terms of the capacity and the ability to decide the fate of their country in their own hands.
Allow me to challenge you on that, because you mentioned that the Commission is one of those agencies that has been accredited by the IEBC to do part of this civic education. What does it, briefly, this civic education or sensitization entail being carried out by the Commission, and does it really then respond to the challenges and the gaps that you've just highlighted?
Yes, thank you very much, Victor, on the same. Yes, the Commission, having been accredited, remember the Commission also has its own mandates, to be able to carry out public awareness and training. And part of public awareness is on human rights. And part of the rights are the civil political rights, which include the right to vote. And therefore, for us, much as we have been accredited by the IEBC to carry out the voter education during this period, it has always been our mandate, part of our mandate under the Census Act of 2011, revised in 2012, to be able to carry out continuous public awareness on human rights aspects, including the right to vote. And therefore, that has been an ongoing process. But coming to answer your question about the specifics that we are doing, as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, apart from doing this as part of our overall mandate, we are going to carry out voter education through the social media. We are going to post through our social media apps. And we are also going to carry out what you call market storms, in the sense that much as the resources involved in terms of, for instance, calling people to a meeting, as opposed to going to where the people are. And therefore, as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we are going to carry out market storms in all our regional offices, which are 6 in the country, to be able to reach out to where the people are and be able to share with them, have this conversation with them, get them to understand that they have a critical role and that it's their right to be able to participate in the electoral process. We are also going to partner very much with the media to be able to give us opportunity. Because remember, with very, very limited resources, we will not be able to reach every part of the country. And therefore, we are going to partner with the media to be able to use fora like this that you have presented to us today, to be able to reach out to all Kenyans, to be able to now share part of voter education and civic education as we work towards getting to the next elections. And like I said, the Commission has been doing this on a continuous basis as part of its mandate, to be able to educate people on their rights, civil political rights, the rights on economic, social, cultural rights, so that they can be able to participate, and aspects of education, aspects of the right to health, so that they can be able to participate on a continuous basis. Of course, not to mention that, of course, part of the challenges that we face include, inadequate resources to be able to do this. But in the very little way that we can be able to do, we are going to work with this, collaborate with other actors, including the civil society, to be able to ensure that we reach out to all members of the public to be able to come out and claim their rights. As they say, part of our call is to stand up for your rights. And we'd like to call on all Kenyans to stand up for their rights, and their right to vote, and their right to vote wisely, and their right to vote from an informed point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Laban. And if I can come back to you, ladies and gentlemen, then there are so many ways in which the youth can participate in electoral processes, being agents and during voting processes, of course, being the leaders like Ruth is vying for a different position. Mike, I think you might also be going for a position. But sometimes other than this, we also see the youth much more actively in other undesirable areas of participation, like violence, disrupting elections, throwing stones, harassing of electoral officials, and this is where they are now used by politicians. Let me just get your quick reactions.
Well, that is the unfortunate bit of it all, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're used, and that is it, you're toast, because you think that just because you are a goon to a politician, you stand a better chance of receiving the perks that come with knowing this politician, but what you become is you forever remain a goon. You never advance from, saying there's nothing much that you gain. You can never really say that. You can never really see any progression in terms of where you are today and where you will be 5 years from now. I have seen some young people who started out as goons all the way back from, university politics very many years ago. And they are still goons for life. They become goons for life. There's no career progression.
Mike is a bit offended now that he's a student leader.
I was a student leader as well. Yeah. So I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, you become a career goon for life, and at the end of the day, what's the value in it? What's to gain out of it? And then also the worst part of it also is that you visit violence upon your fellow young people. You fight yourself. You're used by politicians to fight yourself, to fight the very same people that tomorrow morning when you wake up and you literally have nothing to go by the day, you have no money for food, you have no money for rent, that person that you would possibly turn to help you come out of that crisis, it's the very same person you're going to fight. Yeah. You find some of them being used to, destroy business establishments. Business establishments, local, and you know what happens, especially in the local areas, even within town, in these urban establishments, you always have that kiosk within your estate or in your area of locality where when things are bad, when the month hits the corner, unaenda unakopa, Hey. Those are the very same people who during elections, you're sent to go and destroy their business establishments, forgetting that at the end of the day, once that election is over, everybody goes back to their default settings. No offense, and sometimes I feel like politicians, my fellow politicians and aspirants who listen to me might think that the narratives I am pushing are not necessarily helping my agenda. But the truth of the matter is that most of these politicians, because of the amount of money they have spent, amount of their personal money they have spent, money they have borrowed people to spend on their political campaigns, once they get elected, they retreat towards looking for, you know, solutions as to how they will recover that money. They will forget about you completely, and what is left for you? What is left for you, you know?
And I like that you raised that because clearly, I mean, it's almost the modus operandi for many people to get into office. Mike, is there a safer way to get into office? Minus this theatrics of violence, because it looks like really for you to go into office, I have to hire people to go and disrupt your opponent's rally and attack her.
Okay, like 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit Parliament, thanks to Honorable Sankok, and I can tell you for free that these leaders, these people are friends. When you go to Parliament, they eat together, they are business partners, and there are better ways of clinching a seat. I can tell you there are better ways like educating the youths and the voters at large to vote in the right leaders. There's no need for violence. At this time and age, we don't have time for such kind of violence. And for the youths majorly, it is our appeal that we discourage them from causing violence so that they are being used by politicians. We highly discourage them from being used by politicians for elective positions.
And I mean, sorry, just to add on to that, I mean, as he says, there are better ways to contribute. What I mean is that young people we are endowed with various skills, you know. You don't necessarily have to be a goon. If contributing towards, because I think what drives these young people to want to become goons or to want to be reduced to that level is that you're trying to also seek relevance. You're trying to say, you're trying to secure your loyalty with this particular politician. I mean, why not pursue other levels of engagement? For instance, being a mobilizer. Why not pursue other levels of engagement? For instance, being a blogger. You could be a mobilizer, you could be a blogger, you could be one of the resource, you could be in the resource team, you could be one of the grounds people. You know, there's so much that if value is what you're trying to seek, if relevance is what you're trying to create, there are very many ways to contribute towards a political campaign. Some of us have contributed. Myself, for instance, in 2017, I contributed actively towards the Women Representatives campaign, and I did not need to become a goon. I didn't need to fight anybody to gain relevance in her team.
Okay, Joshua, the 30 seconds that I have are not enough for you to contribute, given the role that you've really played in trying to help Kenyans and Kenyan youth avoid violence. We have to go for a quick break, but before we do, we have some feedback? All right, let's come back with some feedback, but don't go too far because Joshua, Laban, Ruth, and Mike are staying with me.
Get the best value for your money by subscribing today for Classic Bouquet at only 899 shillings for 30 days to enjoy 64 channels. Classic Bouquet. Premium content on Star Times. Subscribe today.
Hamjambo wa Kenya, naitwa Denzel Njuguna. Kupata wimbo wangu Kigoshonerio as your skiza tune, bonyeza *811 *933#. Skiza na Nation, supporting local talent.
Try to be somebody else. which is which is which.
I think kids should be allowed to stay up because you give them freedom when they're still young.
They'll stay up until the time they want and it will disrupt their health.
Today we're making hot dogs. Goodness.
All holders are notified to report and surrender unclaimed financial assets to the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority on or before November 1st, 2021. Visit www.holders.ufaa.go.ke and get started.
Every Friday at 10 p.m., NTV is dubbed as the home to the biggest and most fascinating people on TV. We give you a fix of the latest trends in entertainment. Pack your eardrums with the freshest hits. And bring you the biggest names in the 254 and beyond. Energy, synergy, fun and flair. If it's hot, it's on the trend. If it's not, well... Catch this exhilarating show every Friday from 10 p.m. with the freshest trio, Osoro Biamono, the Scratch Master himself, DJ E, and your sassy homegirl, Amina Abdi Rabar. All this on the trend, only on NTV.
His Excellency Hassan Ali Joho has granted 100% waiver on all interest for residential, commercial, industrial and agricultural property rates. All property owners in Mombasa County are advised to take advantage of the waiver period that ends on 20th October 2021. Take notice that once the waiver period lapses, the county government will institute all necessary measures to recover any unpaid rates and penalties through legal proceedings, including repossessing of the defaulter's land. Lipa kodi, epuka hodi.
I'm growing up, I'm growing into every moment.
Nurture the moment. Minute Maid Nutri Defenses, fortified with vitamin E and zinc to help improve your defense system.
As a member of the International Organization of Securities Commissions, the Capital Markets Authority joins other securities regulators globally in promoting awareness about capital market products and discussing its role in protecting investors.
AMRC's objectives are aligned with the government's affordable housing pillar of the Big Four agenda. Visit any of the participating financial institutions today and start your home ownership journey. Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, unlocking liquidity for affordable housing.
Thank you for staying with your world on NTV. Very beautiful pictures from Makueni County right there, aerial pictures. We are picking up from where we left our conversation on the youth, the role of the youth in electoral processes. Mike Sagana, a youth leader, is still with me. Ruth Mbogo, political aspirant, is also still with me, as well as Joshua Changwonyi, is the Executive Secretary of the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, and Laban Cheriot, the Deputy Director and Head of Public Education and Training at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, that is KNCHR. Joshua, before I get your response, let me just get to see what some, of course, of our viewers on social media have been saying. Remember the question earlier on is, are the youth playing their rightful role when it comes to electoral processes? Hailene Mo says, Kenyan youth have a role in electoral process. Should be the question. I think, yeah, thank you, Hailene. Gani says, as for me, I won't vote. I'm trusting no one this time. People are greedy, egocentric, and self-centered. And I repeat, I won't vote. Thank you for your feedback, Mgani, but I will insist that you should vote. Mercy Jimmy says, you should first start with the need for an ID card first before we get to the voter's card. That's what should be the first thing. Doing voters registration to youths with no IDs, are we really helping? Thank you, Mercy Jimmy. And Joseph Mwangi says, those claiming to be part of the solution are actually part of the problems we face as Kenyans. They know youths lack jobs. That's why they are being enticed in every election year. The question is, for how long will they be using the youth employment as a campaign tool? Then forget immediately they are voted for. Thank you, Joseph. Joseph continues to say, as the youth don't listen to any promises made by a person who has been in government but never delivered anything. Ask them what hindered them from achieving it while in office, and why do they always realize youths need employment during campaigns? Very, very pertinent question by Joseph Mwangi there, part of the feedback that we are receiving. But really, I think we also have a caller. We have the caller. She's still with us, Chepto. Good morning, Chepto. Habari asubuhi. Do you have a comment or a question for our conversation?
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Remy.
Kenya.
Yes.
My name is Remy Tepto. I'm from Rongai.
Thank you.
Mimi ni youth leader Rongai County.
Okay.
And my question is,
go on.
Kwa nini sisi vijana tumekuwa kansa ya peke yetu? Sisi ndio ugonjwa tukiwa peke yetu. Tumekuwa tukijifanya tunajua mambo mengi, but ikifika siku ya kura ndio tunatumika, but siku hizo zingine kwa nini sisi hatuonyeshi kazi zetu za kufanya? I'm speaking kwa huyu kijana anajiita youth leader.
Mike, I hope you're listening.
Wakati yako Nairobi amepanga mikakati za vijana, kwa nini implement? Kwa sababu shida vijana wako nayo sio kuwa ati watatumika siku ya uchaguzi. Watatumika wakati hawana kazi siku hizo zingine, mpaka miaka 5 ikifika wako very exhausted na watakuwa wana take anything zenye inakuja kwa meza yao.
All right, thank you, Remy Chepto from Rongai in Nakuru County. I'll allow you, Mike, to respond very briefly.
Allow me to respond to what Chepto said. There are solutions, and we are putting in place as youth leaders to help the youths. We've not yet gotten the rightful opportunity, because you know the leaders that we have at the top, they're not concerned about the youths. That's the matter, the truth of the matter. Yeah, they're not even concerned about the youths, because we try to push for policies and they end up not being actualized.
Joshua is looking at you very keenly, yeah.
That is very true. I won't lie. That is very true. So that is why we are looking up to take these positions, so that we can advocate for the policies and the rights of the youths in this country.
When Ruth will tell you that during our last conversation, my question was, are the youth actually going to deliver the change that they keep talking about? Because we have a couple of young MPs in Parliament today. From where I sit, I'm not so convinced that they are bringing that change.
You're not convinced? And from where I sit, there was a research that was done. I don't know, a research or whatever, but the performance for the MPs, the top 20, most of them were youths.
I'm really looking for this
youth
research.
MPs.
And I'll try and, of course, confirm what you are saying. But really, Joshua, let me just allow you to respond. Because clearly there's a bit of a correlation between these issues of the problems that we face, unemployment, and now how we become misused during election periods.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. The youth problem in this country is not new. I remember when we were observing the 2007 general elections in this country. You know, that time the youth were being directly addressed, you know, by the politicians, and I think also the same as in 2013, walikuwa wanaitwa vijana. The youth will solve your unemployment problems. We will get you jobs. We'll do 1 million. I think 500,000 jobs. Was it by year, Ruth, if you remember?
I think so. By
yes, and then
that is 15 years ago.
Yes, that's 15 years ago. Now in 2017, slowly the language, because the youth are realizing, you see that apathy. I mean, from that response, especially from Cheptor and is it Jimmy, we saying I will not vote. You know, that is a bitterness. From a practical experience of how these people have been, you know, deceived in the past. But the politicians are also very witty and very clever. Now, they are not saying vijana, they are not saying youth. They are saying what were border. Who are in border? They are the youth. They are saying hustlers. Hustlers is the language of the youth. I'm hustling, you know, I'm online, I'm doing what. That's the language they are using now. What were mukokoteni? Those are the youth. Mama Mboga, of course, you know, the way the people would want to say, I'm trying to make a living, you know, and you know, make ends meet. So they also penetrate into those spaces and use the language.
Are we saying that this very same people will be back in 2027 with just another different? I mean,
oh yeah, they will coin it. They will just rebrand it. You know, yes, they will just rebrand it. And let's also be very honest to ourselves and say these are realities of narratives that are persuasive and they are made to make the youth subscribe into these conversations of, you know, the way they say, I've managed to put them in the box. So is boxing the youth or the youth will be able to get out of the box?
Okay.
So those are questions. But again, I think there was a candid conversation we were just engaged before we formally went into the debate that outcomes, it is the political sphere of life that triggers our balkanization, our ethnicity emotions, our divisions. But let's say, for instance, if you go to a hospital and you are sick, you don't bother
ask who
is this tribe, I mean, of this doctor or the nurse. Or when you are admitting a child into the Form 1, you're not asking who the principal is from which tribe. We don't ask ourselves. But when it comes to voting, but again, from my analysis, which is personal, the youth can be the answer to the problems that we face in this country.
All right.
And it's as follows, Victor.
Okay.
This is a constituency of the population that do not know issues around ethnicity. I can tell you for sure. These are the people who are going to cement this country into unity. Because for them, being Kalenjin or you know, Mijikenda or Pokot doesn't matter to them. As long as you are somebody with a particular skill and I need you in my business, please, let's do business. That is what the youth are doing currently.
Okay.
Whether online, physically, but I think that is a conversation that we should be engaged, so that at least in terms of what educating this youth, we should also present them to be people that have opportunities that is glaring at them.
And I'll allow you to finish your point, but I have Tobias on the line from Pipeline Nairobi. Tobias, briefly, good morning. How are you this morning?
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, Tobias.
Thank you for this very confidential discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a youth, I have to contribute. And in my contribution, I have to say politics is affecting the youth. And that is why, in my opinion, this voter apathy is going to continue, at least for some time. Yeah, the reason for this is that when the politicians conduct civic education, they do not take into account what politics itself is. And the youths are not informed about what they are going to benefit as far as politics is concerned. And you know, politicians have this trend of preaching blood out of guava. Like the youth have problems, you know, problems that originate from the system of education, you know, like it takes, for example, very many universities graduate yearly, you know, like the University of Nairobi and the other universities. So we have inlet, there is no outlet, you know, there are no jobs for the youth. The youth take the politics as a source of employment, you know. They want to be in the internet, you know, they are blogging, using abusive languages, you know. trying to get some money which cannot actually help.
Okay.
So in my opinion, I believe politicians should be at least true to their word.
Okay.
So they don't preach blood out of guava.
Okay.
You know, if they continue doing that, the youth in turn will expect the bottles to be filled with the sugar, you know, bread, you know.
Yeah.
Like, whenever we see a politician, we see our problem and like we are, this is the hope of our unborn.
Okay.
You know.
Thank you,
now
Tobias.
Yes.
Thank you. I have to let you go so that I can allow them to respond briefly before we end the conversation. Do we still have more callers? All right, but really, we can sit down and blame politicians for the whole day, Joshua. We can sit down and blame them the whole day, but really, I like the point that you raised about what the youth can do for themselves, and I want us to talk about the way forward now. And let's start with where you left.
Yeah, Victor, the youth have an opportunity to participate in voter education for the rest of the population, even on voluntary basis. Mm-hmm. Because they are the ones who can visit the websites of, let's say, the IEBC, the National Police Service, the judiciary of this country, mm-hmm. The Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, because those are institutions that are involved in administration and management of elections. Mm-hmm. And they are able to simplify this message and even tell those elderly in the communities, they, not necessarily in the online, but just even simplifying in the vernacular language of what exactly does it mean by saying secrecy of the ballot, mm-hmm. or marking the ballot paper, mm-hmm. or even by making an informed choice, mm-hmm. or even trying to even enhance conversations on how the previous elections have happened in this country. Mm-hmm. Then the youth also have an opportunity to participate in supporting IEBC by submitting themselves as the officials of IEBC, mm-hmm. because they are the ones who would want these opportunities, either as clerks, as presiding officers, and even as election observers, because from the Elections Observation Group, ELOC, because we do have election observers placed on the ground, mm-hmm. and majority of them are the youth. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? The youth presence in the electoral process is very prominent. Prominent in the sense that they play in all sectors, whether as election officials, election observers, voter educators, or even people who are interested in the campaigns, mm-hmm. of different candidates. Mm-hmm. They are the ones to shape for the right things to happen, because if they can influence from within, you can imagine that power that the numerical numbers of the youth can provide in terms of shaping their agenda for our electoral process to happen in a way, the way we've crafted our various pieces of legislation and the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Then lastly, we would like to encourage the youth to submit themselves, or rather offer themselves for the candidatures of different political offices, mm-hmm. because they should be the ones now trying to influence the public affairs, the management of public affairs, mm-hmm. Because when they are sent to power, even that trial, because if they come, they are not being seen as people who already have money. Mm-hmm. They are not the Songos, the Songonization of politics. And of course, I say this in respect to the language that we have in our country, that you must be money bags. Mm-hmm. You must be throwing money. Mm-hmm. But if you just come out of a university, or let's say, for instance, if you become a student leader like Ruth and my brother here, and you submit, the voters will see you from a potential of change, mm-hmm. in the society. And once you get into those positions, you can instill these values that we are talking about. Okay. And then lastly, is that the youth are able to verify information that is accurate and what is fake. Mm-hmm. This disinformation and mm-hmm. fake news mm-hmm. is what is actually influencing our public opinion currently. Mm-hmm. And of course, we cannot expect those ones who are in the villages to discern and say this is fake and this is not fake. The youth have the opportunity to rectify and say, I see this is fake. And we've seen IFBC fighting that all the time, mm-hmm. Bringing out adverts which are fake and, writing to say this fake, communicate. The youth can, assemble themselves and say, we no longer want disinformation and misinformation in the electoral process in this country.
Okay. All right. I have another caller on, of course, joining us this morning. I believe that should be Solomon from Ruiru. Good morning, Solomon. How are you this morning? Briefly, do you have a comment or a question?
Yes. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys?
I'm well, Solomon. How are you?
Yes. I'm fine.
Yes.
I'm a youthful aspirant from Doilo.
Yeah.
And what I would want to tell the youth of this nation,
Yeah.
that we are the silver bullet left to save our country. If we don't go for this seat, we will continue suffering. And another thing, I would like to raise an issue.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I went to change my vote.
Yeah.
Transferring it from my village back to where I work.
Yeah.
In Ruiru. And I noticed something. You are told that in order to change that vote, you need a notice from the chief, your area chief. Now, what I was asking, is this being done by IEBC or is it a political or? Because if at all you need a notice from the area chief to change your vote.
Thank you.
This one is discouraging a lot of people who are willing to change their votes and maybe to vote in their areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Solomon. I think it's something that I also noticed on social media. We are still trying to follow the matter with the IEBC, and I think we will try and to respond to it as well from here. But really, earlier on, Laban, you mentioned the issue of Kenyans not just waiting for politicians to come with their false promises. Is it a time that we should start seeing Kenyans developing sort of their own kind of manifesto of what they want you to do, as opposed to waiting for you to come and tell us what you want to do?
Yes, thank you very much, Victor. I think that was going to be my first point, that the Kenyans and youth in particular should be able to set the agenda of what it is that they would like to see in the next dispensation. And therefore, they should not wait to be guided and be told. And the best way to do that is that, of course, once each of the candidates bring the agenda to them, the youth should be able to scrutinize what it is that they have, and then ensure that and ask the critical question, what is in it for us as the youth of this country in this manifesto? So that then we will be able to influence and bring about that change that is required. I think the other, alongside the same point, is that, and I think that has also been mentioned by the other panelists, is that the youth should find their way into those political party organs, so that they can be able to make sure that their agenda is on board. And I know, of course, with the diversity, the youth can be in all the contesting political parties. Where is their role in terms of setting the agenda, other than waiting to be told this is what we'll do for you? They should be able to say, this is what is in us, and we'd like to take this up in the next election. I would also like to mention that going forward, the youth have a very critical role. Like I mentioned earlier on, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is monitoring the elections also with a human rights-based approach lens, so that we can be able to see what are some of the areas that they can be able to, where there are violations of human rights and seek redress for them. And I think one of the opportunities, apart from setting the agenda, is that the youth can also participate as monitors of the electoral processes. And where there are issues of, for instance, some of the members, for instance, being denied the voters' cards, like was mentioned by the last caller, they should be able to raise that up so that you can be able to take up with the right respective organizations to be able to have that corrected. If there are issues, for instance, of violence, and this time problem being meted out of the citizens by other state actors, including the security agencies, then they should be able to speak up. They should be able to monitor and be able to reach out to institutions such as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the National Police Service, and other agencies of government, so they can be able to monitor and bring out some of that.
Okay.
One of the issues, for instance, regarding also monitoring, I know sexual and gender-based violence has also been used as a tool of violence in the election time, and therefore the youth should be able to bring out some of those so that they can be able to be addressed.
Okay.
My other point regards the registration as voters. The youth really need to come out and take up these opportunities presented to them now, those who are not registered and do not have their cards, so that they can be able to be, people who can be able to participate. So registering as voters is one of them.
Yeah.
But then going the next step of faith, of ensuring that they participate in the actual voting.
Okay.
Allow me, Victor, to address Mugani, who said, I won't vote. And allow me to mention that it is often said that bad leaders are voted in by good people who refuse to participate or to vote in the election. And therefore, I would like to remind Mugani that who wrote that she won't vote and she can't vote, that yes, you have made the first step of taking up your voter's card. Please go ahead and do not allow bad leaders to be, because by not voting, in other words, in essence, you're saying you are actually voting in a bad leader. And therefore take up the space and please come out of that and be able to participate. I would also like to say that the youth can be able to utilize the social media platform in a very respectful manner, to be able to reach out, to carry out voter education using the various platforms that they have, to be able to share among themselves qualities of good leadership, so that they can be able to carry out and help to bring about the change that's desired. And lastly, I would like to say that the youth have a very critical role to play in promoting peace in our country. And therefore, as we go towards the election, they should promote peace at all times. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Laban. I think Ruth has been taking down some notes. It's only fair if I allowed you to briefly comment.
It would be an injustice if you did not allow me to summarize what I would like to say about the young people and their contribution towards this coming election. Number one, young people need to strategize, to organize and to galvanize around a common agenda that they will present to the politicians. Look at what is happening in the political landscape right now. Various regions and politicians from various regions are recoiling to their tribal cocoons and trying to come up with agenda for their community. See what is happening in central Kenya, where you're seeing various political leaders coming together and saying, these are, our irreducible minimums as a community. This is what we want for the Mount Kenya region from the various politicians that would come to seek our votes. So young people need to come up with what I would call a common youth agenda that they would present to any politician that is approaching them. Irreducible minimums that they would tell the politician that, look, if I am to give you our vote, if we are to give you our votes, then we need the following delivered. We need to have a guarantee that the following shall be delivered once you're in office. And that is the only way that the young people will be respected and their voice heard. Second, I think that young people need to now rally behind their own, because it is clearly being proven time and time again that the few young members of parliament who had been elected actually tend to try and pay some attention to issues affecting the youth. Recently, we have seen one of the nominated members of parliament trying to come up with a bill that would try to reduce the burden of help on young people who are going through university. Another bill that has also been put to the table is one that is trying to reduce or lower the barriers and burden that young people have to go through when they're trying to seek employment. So if we are clearly seeing evidence that, rallying behind our own will actually work for our agenda. So I think young people, because we actually constitute a great percentage of the voting population, why not rally this great percentage of the voting population towards our own? And the beauty in that, also the advantage with that is that, you see, this is a peer. This is your peer that you will be voting in. It is much easier to approach your peer and actually even hold them to account than it is to try and hold to account someone who is 70, 80 years old, trying to sit with them and even have a conversation with them, a conversation about an accountability conversation with them once they get to office. If you vote in your fellow young person, wherever you will meet them, in a social joint, at a church, at an event, at a football tournament, you will be able to sit them down and have a conversation in a language that you can both understand. And then finally, when we talk about the integrity of the vote, the burden of trying to transform the electoral system is not just at the voter registration stage, but also at the voting period, when the voting period comes. I would urge young people, as many of us as possible, to actually sign up as IBC clerks and presiding officers during that, when that time comes, because we shall be at the center of protecting the integrity of the vote. And finally, we cannot entirely place the burden of trying to reform what has been wrong, what has gone on wrong within our electoral system to the youth. Look at how this entire conversation has gone on for these 2 hours that we've been here. It appears as if the young people are the ones who are supposed to resolve the problems that we are facing within our electoral system. It appears as if the entire burden is on the young people, when we also have an entire older generation that has absolutely no idea how to vote, has absolutely no idea the value of, on the power that their vote does hold. So even as we are placing emphasis on how we should educate the young people and teach them the power of their vote and their value of their vote, then we should also place emphasis on educating the older generation on the integrity of the vote and how to vote and what voting, what is at stake if they fail to vote in proper leaders.
All right, Mike, very briefly.
Now, allow me to borrow a note from Bobby Wine's slogan. People power, our power.
You're a proper politician.
People power, our power. Now, we as the youth, as you can see, we have the numbers. Out of the 19.6 million registered voters in the last election, we had at least 9.9. And with the coming voter registration that is ongoing, we have another additional like 5 million or 6 million. So it is my urge to the youths out there that it is our time to support our own.
Yeah.
If we support our own, I'm very much sure our agendas and policies will be addressed.
Okay. Joshua, exactly 40 seconds.
Yes, Victor, what I just wanted to tell the youth of this country is that the national identity card is the weapon to use during the elections, not the voter's card. We did away with the voter's card as a result of massive advocacy by civil society, because people were acquiring the voter's card and sell them in exchange of money. We did away with that. You only need the valid Kenyan passport if you use it to register as a voter, to produce during the voting of next year's general elections, or the national identity card if you used it to register as a voter. And I think that needs to be clarified to the youth of this country so that they take care of their voter's card, of their national identity card or their Kenyan passport, if they will use it as a document for registration as a voter. And that is what they will use to vote in the coming general elections. Thank you very much.
Wow, wonderful. What a proper place to close this conversation about the role of the youth in electoral processes, and not just having some sort of engagement, but meaningful engagement of young people in electoral processes, because after all, they form the majority of the country's population as well as the voting bloc. That's where we leave it this morning. Many thanks to my guests in studio this morning who have helped us with this conversation. Joshua Changwony is the Executive Secretary of CRECO, that is the Consortium and Reform Constitution and Reform and Education Consortium. I'm getting the name wrongly. Of course, Laban Cheruyot joining us virtually is the Deputy Director and Head of Public Education and Training at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, as well as, of course, Mike Sagana, a youth leader, and Ruth Ambogo, who is a political aspirant. These are some of the names we will be seeing as we head into the 2022 general elections. We hope this conversation has been as meaningful as we hoped it would have been for you, especially young people watching us this morning. My name is Victor Kiprop. On behalf of the entire team, it's goodbye and God bless.